as I call you, just make your way up here and sit wherever you feel most comfortable. So our first person is Luis Albert Baez. So we're going to have him come up first. Yes, give a round of applause. All right, so I'm going to give the little intros that we asked him some questions about them. So Albert became a dad on January 8, 1999, and became a grandfather November 2nd, 2021. He is the father of 4 children: Aaliyah, 24, Xavier, 21, Angel and Deshali, 13. He has 8 siblings. He's the youngest on his mom's side and the second to the youngest on his dad's side. So that's Albert. The second person we want to bring up is Pastor Esteban Nunez. We call him Steven Nunez. He can make his way up. We're really grateful. Pastor Steven became a father in 2008. He has 2 children, Matthias, 10, and Malachi, 8. He has 3 siblings and is the youngest child. Next up, we have Alex Durbala. He became a father in 2008. He has children, 2 daughters, Marsara and Salma, both twins, ages 13 going on 14. He has siblings, 1 brother and 3 sisters, and he is the eldest. And then our final panelist of the night is E. Rodriguez. He became a father in May 2nd, 2007. He has 2 lovely children, Melody and Leilani. He has 4 siblings and is the second youngest of the siblings. So again, a round of applause for all our panelists. So we have a total of 15 questions, and in 10 minutes, we're going to try to get through all of them. But let's start off with the first one, which is, did you feel ready to be a dad when you got the news of your first child? So let's start on that end and work our way this way. Okay. Oh, and by the way, if you don't feel to answer, it's not mandatory, you can pass questions. But yes.
You only get 2 passes.
So initially, I was overwhelmed with the news. It was one of those that, you get the news, hey, you're about to be a dad, and your whole life changes. You think you're ready until that baby actually comes out. When the baby comes out, your whole life changes. Your perspective changes. Your way of thinking changes. Now it's not all about you or your spouse. It's your child first. Let me not get those Air Jordans. Let me get the kid, some diapers. For the mothers out there, they know how much diapers cost, especially now. And all the other stuff that comes with it. Supplies, they get sick, you have to buy stuff. So you have to change your mindset as far as, I can't buy these things anymore for me. Now I have to buy stuff for him or her, for my child. So in that sense, I initially, yes, ready. When the child was born, no. And Aaliyah, she was, yeah. It was a test.
That's all they want to know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not going to leave you in suspense. Basically, Aaliyah was, she had jaundice when she was born. I didn't know what jaundice was. We lived in an apartment that had yellow lights. So when you have yellow lights, you can't really tell the skin of the child. And jaundice is one of those things that once the child goes out and, you have the natural light, then you see the skin. And as a dad, you're like, wait a second, so there's something wrong with my child already? It's like, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. It's not on you. It's just stuff that happens. So they gave us this light, this UV light, and you have to put it around her every night. And that means that it's going to break down everything that's inside her body that's basically making her skin yellow. And for those nurses, you know, what is it, rubellum or? Eso mismo. So, while that process is going, you're like, it's kind of like scary because you don't know that, you think it's life-threatening. It's not. It could have been back in the days, but it's not anymore. So now you have to take her to the doctor, and I take her to the doctor, and there's I was in the Army, so I would take her to an Army doctor, and the Army doctor was of higher rank than me. But when you talk about the child, you're like, well, you don't have rank because you're dealing with my child. So, if you do something wrong, I'm not gonna be Christian for a while, And every time she went to the doctor, they had to basically take blood from her foot. And when you look at a little baby and you're like, you see this needle and you just poke them, it just turns your life around. You just want to cry for them, and it's like, just take my blood. But that's not the test. The test is for the child. So, yeah, that's it.
I wasn't ready for college. I wasn't ready for marriage. I wasn't ready for ministry. And I wasn't ready for children. As much as you can plan and prepare, you're into a rude awakening when you reach these important moments in life. And I'll tell you one thing. I think for having a child or being a dad for the very first time, it didn't pan out like how everybody else may have planned it and went to work and got it. My wife and I were married for 10 years and we couldn't conceive for those 10 years. And it was in our 10th year that the Lord opened up her womb and allowed us to have Matthias and his brother Malachi 2 years later. So, to be quite honest, I thought I was ready, but in reality, it's how can you be ready for something that you've never experienced in your life? You can only plan and hope and rely on God for when that child comes. You inherit a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now when the second one comes, now you're like a pro.
It's
that first time.
Well, I'm just gonna relate to both of them. I was ready, but having a child, you're never ready. Trust me. Why? Because it's a huge responsibility that God puts in your hand. So something that you have to care for. You have to make sure, because a lot of things comes into your mind. Where am I going to be a great father? That's the first thing that comes. Am I going to care for that child? Because it's something that God puts in your life. This is not a toy you borrow today and tomorrow you get rid of it. This is something for life. And so that do us apart. So I would relate to both of them. My kids, they were a miracle. Twins, they were 2-in-1 package. So it was. I didn't tell you. My parents, we hang out all the time. But I never told them my kids were twins. So we just first time being a parent is exciting, but is kind of hard as well too, because you have to. This is your first step. You learn. To me, I was so scared. I called Mom, hey, I'm gonna do this. But there's always that instinct that God is a God-given instinct. Give it to you as a parent, that you will know what your child needs, and it's a beautiful journey, man. I always tell people I will do it all over again. I bond with my kids so much. I love my children so much. It's just something that I cannot describe to you guys unless you have your own and then you're gonna know what I'm talking about. That's why I tell the children always have respect for your parents, love your parents, because you don't know what the parents go through. Just a mother carrying a child for 9 months, man. I don't know. I thank God that He made a woman carry a child. Tell you, man.
How can I go after that?
Yeah, you go there. Come on, man. There's always an add-on, man.
No, I was ready. Man, I'll never forget this. When Sabrina called me to tell me that she was pregnant, I was at work. I was like, hey, what's going on? I'm at work. And she was like, I gotta tell you something. I was like, what's that? I'm pregnant. Stop playing. Click. And then she called me back. I'm serious. Oh, I'm happy for you. But definitely when, man, to echo what Pastor Stephen said, it's hard to plan, because you're not going to plan. I was planning for a boy and I got 2 girls. So, there was a lot of things that came into play, and then I don't know about you guys, but I try to at all times compare myself to the GOAT, my dad. So to compare myself to him is next to impossible.
Nice.
So he's the greatest man, my best friend. And I just want to one day be like him.
That's it. Hey.
Okay, next question. How has your father influenced the way that you father? We'll start with Izzy since we were kind of going into it.
I was going to say that.
They got me. My dad is an influence. I mean, he was the influence, right? So, we were a low-income family. We were a family of 5 children. I was second to last, which was always cool. But as far as the influence he gave me was just how he affected people, how he affected his family, how he was a leader, and how he just put God above all. No matter the situation, no matter how bad it was, he got up there and he preached his heart out. So I said, if he can do it, Jay can do it.
Oh, it's to me, man. Huh?
Wait, and just parenthesis, Jay is Pastor Javier. Go ahead and give him
Sorry, I forgot to mention that house pastor is my brother.
Well, my dad was, and he is, I always say the greatest man that I have known all my life. Every child, their parents are the best parents in the whole world.
Next to my dad.
There you go. Right there. Just my dad is a little older than me. That's all.
My dad, thank you, Dad.
You know. That's all right, man. We in church. I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm gonna let the Spirit of God, man, take over. My dad was and is really one of the wonderful people that I have grown to see. Very kind. That's one thing my dad, he's a giver by nature. When I tell you giver, he will take away from him and give it to somebody else. My dad really grew up in a poor environment. He didn't even finish his studies because he couldn't have to care for his mom. His father passed away at an early age when he was 13 years old. So dad did things for us that he wished he could have had when he was a kid. So he didn't. So whatever he did not have, he provided to us as we were growing. My dad is the type of person that he never mentioned "I love you," but his actions spoke for him. To me, that value more than anything. I have learned something that I tell my kids I love you because I wanted to verbalize it to them. But my dad, he wasn't that person. But he's just for his character, his actions. You met all over him seriously. And I pray every day that God will give him many more years to live so I can grow old with him. So.
Praise God. I know you're dead. Well, for those that don't know, my dad and his dad, Jay's dad, like he said, Pastor Javier's dad, they worked together in the council for many, many years. Emiliano pastored in Milwaukee, and my dad pastored in Chicago. So when you say your dad is like the GOAT, yeah, man. Your dad, I've had experiences from my childhood, 12th Street, man. The impact that your dad had in the community, in the council, and with everybody, My dad, when I was born, my dad was already serving the Lord. My other siblings, they kind of grew up seeing my dad one way and then noticing the change in his life. And my dad is very loyal to people, always gave his heart out to people. And what I can say is that the impact that he's made in my life was that although he didn't have many opportunities like other people in continuing their education, going to college, even in that time there were people that I knew that had furthered their education, at least they finished high school. My dad was forced to get out of school in 6th grade and start working the farms in Puerto Rico to make in the cigar plants. They were making cigar tobacco and all that stuff. So from a very young age, he was pulled out of the educational system, but yet my dad became an entrepreneur at the age of 25. And he started buying properties, and as he bought properties, he would flip them, and he would take the profits and just throw them away. And right now, my dad is like 85 years old. He's been retired for like 40 years, living off of that money that he has been able to put aside. Without knowing good English, he got into opening up a bodega store, with a deli in a neighborhood where there was no Hispanics at the time. And they called my dad Pancho, because of Pancho Villa, but they called my dad Pancho, and he was there for about 20 years, and that's where we grew up, and that's where I saw my dad, hustle. But at the same time, my dad, he always told people about Jesus. So I've never seen my dad outside of the ways of the Lord. And I know some more of the questions will bring out some more out of me and sharing the experiences that I had. But one of the things is that he always showed that he's a provider, he's a protector, and that he will lead the way for our family. That I tip my hat off to him. I've seen that, and I try to replicate it in my lifetime. So my kids, they see my dad now with dementia, and my dad is real. He's always been goofy, but now it's like toddler goofy, And so they think that that's my dad. Like he's always been like that, So I let them see the legacy that my dad left behind or has implanted and embedded in me. I let them see it through me and experience it through me.
My dad, he was a very hard worker. He worked in a tobacco plant as well, up in Massachusetts. Every time he would come home, you could smell that, and I always remember that about him. But he used to always, for around that time, he used to always dress fly, so put on the pants and all that stuff. And I always thought it was all, for the family, but it wasn't. So that part of my dad, as far as the working portion of it, I always try to be like him. Like one of the things he taught me was, and it was one of those that he'll give you a cantazo real quick if you do it, is if you're doing a job and it's a job that you're supposed to be standing and you're sitting down, he'll knock you out. So I learned that from him. And I actually tell the twins and Xavier, my son, it's like, something sort of kind of like that. It's like, when you're working for somebody and they see you that you're working sitting down when you're supposed to be standing up, or when you're supposed to be moving something, then you're basically stealing money. And I know your dad, the pastor, he always talks about that. He doesn't take cell phones to work. He doesn't answer the cell phone, because if you're working and they're paying you to do a job, you do that job. So I learned that from my dad. I didn't learn how to be a dad from my dad. I tried not to emulate that because my dad was never around. He was more like, puts on those clothes, gets in the van, and disappears. So that part of my dad, I try to keep that away from, me, my life with my children. My dad was one of those guys that he would never tell you I love you. He would never show you that, that he loves you, but he provided. I guess that mentality of, the 60s and the 70s. It's like, I will work, I will provide. You have a roof under your head or over your head, and you have food to eat. That's all you need, So that's what I got from my dad. So I call that tough love, and I don't believe in that. There's times for everything. There's times for tough love, but not with your children. So that's all I got.
So our third question is, and we're concerned with Alex to see if they start hopping around a bit. What's one practice or one thing that your dad did that you said you never do as a father?
In like growing up with my dad, that is one thing I guess I can consider that now he's kind of down on me. When I was a teenager, when I was a kid growing up, my dad, he has this thing, he was so focused at school. Always, he needed me to be going to school. So I was the type that I go to school, then I want to go outside and play with my boys. So my dad, he said, if I catch you playing with you boys, you won't catch it. So old school people, they don't play. So when I used to be standing up with my friends and I see my dad coming, I see the car from far away. Man, I had to get home before he gets there. Because I noticed something that my dad was, man, I'm telling you, man, it's like riding a horse, man. I had to, like my feet, they be touching my neck. So I'm telling you, my man, I'm telling you, man, I almost made it in the Olympics, man. But you know what? Those are things because old school people, they taught different. Back when I was growing up in the 90s, it was just so totally different. Because if you disfocus yourself from school and you start hanging out with you boys, doing this, doing that, doing this, so surely but slowly you will start straying away from school, and then you start doing your own thing on the street. So my dad, his worries was that. So he was like, hey, you choose the time. But always I used to feel embarrassed, almost in front of my friends, for that gesture. When I see my dad, I have to leave my friends and run. So that's one thing I said I will never do to my children. Like I want to give the opportunity to my kids. They can hang out with their friends, you know. Not to go all the time, but school has to come first. To me, school is very, very important. But in the meantime, you have to give them that privacy. Privacy with their friends so they can have fun and stuff like that. But I will never put them in that predicament where they feel like, oh my God, let me run to the house, or to feel that urge doing that. No, truthfully, that's the only thing I really remember, and it used to bug me out when I was a kid. But it is what it is. You deal with it, but that's my thing. So.
One of the things that I think is very, very important, especially if you're brought up in a Christian home and it's a home that is active in ministry, one of the takeaways that I can tell you about my dad was that he was brought up in an era where they very much like pounded on these Christian people that church and ministry is before family. And one of the issues that I saw that it took place in our family was that we saw my dad so focused in ministry, like ministry came first. There was family time, there was vacations, but everything was around ministry. So I'll give you an example. In the movement or the council organization that we belonged in, every year for 1 week, and they're going to laugh probably because they know it's true. For 1 week, every summer, they would pick a different state where they would do a convention.
Oh, Jesus.
And we will fly to these places or drive to them, and we will be literally, at the moment you arrive there, don't even get comfortable in your hotel room, or if you're staying in somebody's house, get dressed. You're going to church, because this church from like Saturday night, every single day from 8 in the morning all the way to like midnight for that whole entire week, right? And then what my dad would do was we'll go on that trip. It could be anywhere. We will go for that 1 week, and then the week after was vacation. But you were so exhausted of being in church that you couldn't even enjoy vacation, And then in vacation, there was also going 4 times to church during the week. Now, I'm not against church. I'm a for church type of individual, but I believe that balance is important in our lives, and we need to prioritize properly. Now that we have more information and more resources and more education that's being poured into people, because we have data that goes back and say, hey man, there's a lot of my generation folks that are not serving the Lord because their parents were so extremist, or they were so focused on ministry that they abandoned the home. They abandoned their marriage. They abandoned their children. So that's one takeaway. And I share this. I want to be very transparent with you guys. I didn't tell my dad I love him until I was like 21. And that was because the Lord forced me to tell him. And it happened in Milwaukee. I gave my heart to the Lord at the age of 21. It was about February of that year. And we were going into probably summertime. And there was an event, Jubileo, a youth rally, a Jubilee in Milwaukee. And I remember my dad didn't even preach. He was just one of the pastors on the altar. And I was all the way in the back. And as they did an altar call, I didn't think I had to pass up. I was saved. I gave my heart to God. And I was already like 5 months into it. I was on fire. But God put it to me that I needed to go up there and forgive my dad. You know? Forgive my dad for what I was holding him against, you know, in my upbringing. Because I played sports in high school. My dad never went to none of my games. You know? So I see the stands and everybody else, their parents cheering for their kids. And then at the end, hey, Steve, you need a ride home? Yeah. I'm jumping in cars with other people. My dad never showed up to none of my games, you know? So as a teenager, as a young man, I held that against my dad. And I said, man, you know what? I feel like there's no connection here. But now, after that encounter with the Lord and the Lord opening up my eyes and making me go up to him and say, hey, please forgive me for holding you, to a certain standard, which I didn't know at the time, but I know now. If we don't have the proper education and we don't have the proper information at our disposal, we're just going to continue to repeat the cycle that we've learned from other people.
That's right.
And my dad was taught from a very early age in ministry that ministry is God and ministry in their family. And unfortunately, it cost him, my siblings, that some of them don't serve the Lord. And we still have hope, and I'm there, and I've been just learning from that. And what I do now as a minister, I got to make sure that as much as I get excited about church and programs and events and all that, I got to make sure that I have family time. And I'll say this: one of the reasons why I didn't confirm immediately is because Mondays, I usually take Mondays for family time. All right, but when you told me about the topic and you sent those questions to me, I said, no, I gotta go, because maybe something that I can share can impact somebody's life. And I'll just take family time tomorrow. Of course, I had to get the approval from the boss at home.
It's all about the boss, baby.
And so, that's one of the things that I think really affected me coming up. And I just thank God that I was rescued by him, that I was restored, and I was able to pass on that forgiveness on to him. Because as you forgive, you release yourself from any particular bondage that may hold you because of your emotions and your sentiments and your feelings.
One thing that I, entering marriage with my beautiful wife, Alexandra, that I said that I will not take away from my dad was, my dad was like, after I joined the military and all that stuff, he was a different person altogether. But growing up, we were an abusive household. So my dad was an alcoholic and a smoker. He's the type of person that would be like, hey, light up a cigarette. So, back in the 80s, I would grab a cigarette, go to the kitchen, turn on the stove, those gas stoves, puff, 2 or 3 times, and take the cigarette to them. And that's how we were brought up. We didn't have seatbelts or anything like that. So, seatbelts is one of those things that when you put it on, it's like, oh, look at you. You have a seatbelt, you're corny. So it was one of those. So growing up and being the baby in the household, I saw a lot of abuse and a lot of violence. So my dad, he would beat up on my mom. And then, she would get drunk, he would get drunk, and then they would beat up on each other. So I had like a ritual, every Friday, it's go to the kitchen, get the knives, get, anything that's sharp, anything that looks like a hammer, and hide it in the room. So that was how I grew up. And I said, I will never do that to my kids. I did, however, pick up drinking. And I haven't had a drink in since I've been coming to this church. It's one of those things I was like, you know what? I don't need this in my life. So I don't get drunk. I don't drink, and I thank God for pulling me away from that. And when you're a scrawny little kid and you see your mom going through all this hurt and pain, and it's all because of the alcohol. That was what was driving all that stuff in the house. You're like, okay, so is today gonna be the day that she jumps out the window? My mom was very overweight. and us trying to pull her out of the window so that she wouldn't throw herself out of a third floor, or anything like that. It's like, it's stuff that stays in your head, but then when you give your life to Christ, all that stuff's like, yes, it happened, but you were saved, and there's a purpose in your life, and I tell you, I never held that against my parents, God rest their souls. Never held that against them. In fact, one day, and I can remember this like it was yesterday, when we were celebrating Alia's quinceañero. I was stationed in El Paso, Texas. I came here. My dad hopped on a flight from Puerto Rico with his new family. He came down, and the first thing he was like, he was gonna say something about my wife, and I said, "Don't you dare, don't say that, because women don't like to hear stuff like that." And he was like, "Whoa, wait a second." It's like, now he knows that he's not talking to a child, he's talking to a man. The husband of Alexandra. So he respected that, and like you said, that was the first time I kissed my father on his cheek, and he was thrown back. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" It's like, and it's one of those things like, at first he looks at you, he's like, "Is he gay?" "No, I'm not gay. I love you. You're my father. I'm going to show you love." And that, for real, that's how my dad grew up. It's like you don't show affection, especially to your kids. If your kid's a man or a boy, you don't kiss them, you don't say I love you, you don't do none of that stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna break that. I tell my kids I love you. When I drop them off, hey, if you don't say bendición pa, I'll be like honking the horn. Hey, look back here. I love you. Have a good day. And that's just, I said that's one thing that I will break, so that my kids know that when they see their grandparents, their dad, their own kids, tell them you love them. I say to my son and the oldest one, Xavier, and he's like, we're working on it.
For me, it was, I would have to echo what Steve said. My dad's balance between the church and ministry and family was probably, there was times where I resented him, where there was a basketball game, he didn't come. The deacon from the church came, Eusebio Cáceres, he's 94, and I still call him every 2 weeks. But Eusebio would come to the games, Jay would come to the games, my worship leader would come to my concerts for band in school, and he was so consumed. So now that I see Pastor Jay, I make sure I say, go be with your family. You gotta let other people lead, and that's what other people are here to do, is serve. Understand it's not the pastor that leads the church, it's we lead the church.
That's right. That's right.
That's pretty simple. My dad is, he's tough. He was tough on me. He was tough on us in front of people. My man was preaching one day. I'll never forget this. I was 11 years old. I just finished playing worship, and I was sitting on this side playing with my friend, and he goes, "Imael, vete siéntate con tu mamá." And he kept preaching. I'm like, how is anybody supposed to receive anything after I just derailed the service? That's it for me.
So, what other father figures were or are in your life currently?
I'll go first. Eusebio Cáceres, 94 years old, call him every 2 weeks. And Pastor Jay.
Father figure was Pastor Ambino, passed away. He was my first pastor. Our pastor, Javier, knows him. He was like a father to me. Connection was just unbelievable. And the second one is our pastor, Pastor Javier. So,
It's Pastor Javier, man. For me. Pastor
Did
Javier.
you say something?
See, I like to study and analyze people, right? And when I look around, I look at people that are serving maybe at the same capacity that I am. And when I see people serving like the pastor, he's been pastoring probably a couple of years more than myself. I've been doing it almost 15 years now. When I started, I had no children. I think when they started, they had kids already, you know? And to be able to go 10 years without having children in ministry and seeing them, you know, a little child coming up, you know? And then seeing how they're pouring into their children and how they protect their children and how they cover their children and how they're there for them. I embrace those things and I learn from a distance. And I'll never forget this. Pastor out here shared this with me. I don't know if he got it from a book but I credit him for sharing it. He said, always find people that are better than you, wiser than you, stronger than you, and more ahead of you. Because if you find, and that's not to find one person that fits all those four shoes. You know, you got to find somebody that's good with their finances. If you want to be better with yours, find somebody that's good with their finances and learn from that individual. If you want to better your relationship with people or with your husband, with your wife, or like the young people here, if you're starting a date, man, go to someone like Pastor Javier, Pastora Margarita, and get information from them. They have a healthy marriage, a strong family. That's a very a good couple to have in your corner. You know, when you want to be healthy, you got to find somebody that's eating right and working out, right? So that you can be inspired and motivated. You want to serve in ministry and be at the top of your game when it comes down to ministry. Find somebody that's so devoted and dedicated to it, and learn from them. So when I looked around, I saw Pastor Javier. I look at it like I'm trying to like use Bible terminology, right? When God looked over the face of the earth, and he saw that only Noah was righteous before him, right? He used Noah to save the world. So when I looked around, all these pastors that had daddy issues, right? and were reflecting the same daddy issues, that I couldn't connect to that. But when I saw Javier and how he conducts himself, how he manages himself, and how he leads his life and puts his family first, I said, man, this is somebody I need to learn from.
My father-in-law, he's always been there. I was dating Alexandra since 1992, so yeah, we've been dating for a while, and since my dad wasn't around, I sort of kind of piggybacked off of her dad, and I was like, I said to myself, I want the same thing she has over there. You know, they show love, and you know, when they have to discipline, they discipline, but they also go out and do, you know, family things that we used to do back, when I was a baby, that we didn't do anymore, and I wanted that. And then coming here after I retired, Pastor Javier as well, he's been an awesome mentor. Anytime I have an issue, I'll call him up, or he'll ask me, because he knows when there's something wrong. He's like, "Hey, little buddy," and I was like, "Yeah, there's something wrong," and he gives me just different ways to deal with situations with the younger kids. The older ones, they're already grown up. Now I have 2 teenagers. They're both 13, so it's something different. The way that they're growing up, and the way that the society is now. It's like it's totally different than the way we brought up Aliyah and Xavier. So we brought them up in military bases and stuff like that. So when you're around that area or around that environment, there's the kids, they show respect to elders. It's like yes or no, sir. And you're like, wait a second. And it's not only because you're in the South. It's anywhere you go, they have that discipline, that respect. And then now I'm dealing with kids. Like my sister told me, so she works in Jacksonville in the school department, and she says, these kids, they don't respect. And I'm like, how old are they? He's like 5 years old. and he called me the B word, and I'm like, whoa, that just, and I don't think it's only the environment around, like in the schools and stuff like that. It's actually in the home as well, because if you teach your kids not to talk like that, then they're not going to talk like that. So.
Let's do name something God has taught you in fathering.
For me, it would be put myself last. Because my family comes first. The reason I say that is because I was raised in the faith. I was fortunate enough to be in ministry since I was a child. My wife was Catholic, so church is new to her. This is her second church. And then Melody, this is the first place she ever led worship. Leilani, doing tech department. This is the way you raise a family.
Yes.
Wow.
So I put myself last and put them first.
To love, honor, and respect my wife. If my sons see the way I treat their mother, they will learn from what I do and later pass it on to whoever they marry. So if I show love, honor, and respect to the queen of my home, they're going to embrace that. They're going to know how to treat their wife. They're going to know how to respect their girlfriend before they become their wives, right? And they will continue to practice the things that they learn. A child first learns at home. Then if you send them to school, they learn 70% of life through the public or private schooling. But the first 4 years, they're learning everything at home, right? So, I'll share this. My son is here and I'm about to embarrass him real quick. But it's in a good way. It's nothing like, oh my God, that one day he's going to be in a panel talking about me. No, it's not like that. But in our house, we used, when him or his brother would poop, right? And they were little, man, so he saw us like touch the young one, say on the back, on the butt, and say, "Did you poop?" Right? And the reason I share this is because I want you to know that they pick up things, and they'll use those things when you least expect it in front of people. And we were at IHOP after a service, right? And our church was there, and then another church, Pastor Willie, was there. Right? And one of the leaders in our church that was, they helped out in bringing up our children while we were ministering in the church. He went to go say hi to Pastor Willie and his whole entire church that was there. My son decided to tag along with him, and my son reached up and saw that he had a bulge in his back pocket, and it was his wallet. So my son touches the wallet and goes to this brother from church. "Did you poo-poo?" In front of everybody, man. And it's something so simple, and it's funny, right? Unless you're the one that's being accused of being pooped, right? But the reason I share this is because they learn so much. Kids are like sponges. And then as they get older, you guys know, you start using the same words that your mama and your daddy shared with you. You use it against them, right? So I go back and say, if I treat my wife with respect, love, and honor her, they're going to learn that, and they're going to learn how to appreciate and love the queen that God brings into their life. Because if you got a great queen, trust me, your kingdom is going to march straight.
Slow to anger. That's it. That's what I learned. It's one of the big things I learned. Slow to anger. I already told you guys the environment I grew up in. So one of those things that that I could have just said, hey, it's not my fault, it's my parents' fault. Blame it on the environment. It's one of those things where I worked at it. I was telling the pastor, like, how was your day? It's like, I was working on the car, and 4 years ago, working on the car and breaking some knuckles and leaving some skin behind, I would have been saying some really nasty words to the car, and like the car's like whatever, but it's not really hurting the car, it's hurting me. And now it's like one of those things, like I could be in the garage and I'm like, God, just guide me wherever I need to go, whatever I need to fix. And it's like, next thing you know, I get the knuckle right in a piece of metal right there. And I'm like, I'm not saying those words anymore. You know, just slow. You know, slow to anger. When my kids come home and say, "Hey, I have an F," you know, in what language? English. It's like, that's your primary language. You know, it's like, don't get mad. It's like maybe there's something in school that they're just not, you know, picking up, you know. So that's the one I go to now, slow to anger.
For me, I always, I learned this from my dad. I always love to help people. Be kind to people, love people. There's something that I like to demonstrate from my children, so my children can learn that. Because on this earth, we don't own anything. It doesn't matter what you have. You just don't. But when you have, and you can be able to provide it for somebody else, and help that person, be there for that person, believe it or not, that's the greatest thing you can ever have. So.
Okay. So, they say everyone has 20/20 vision in hindsight. Knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently?
I don't think so. Yeah, there's been, you know, headaches and all that stuff, but guess what, you know, hindsight 20/20, it's like, oh, well, you know, I did this different, but something else can happen. So I truly loved every single moment that I've had with my kids. One thing that I wish I could do more or did more with my older kids is just, you know, like just be there for them more. You know, I got busy around 9/11. Some of y'all weren't even born yet. But when the towers went down, that's when the Army got really busy. And that's when families, you know, stopped being families, you know, for years, you know, like a year at a time, 9 months. And that brings it brings a lot of separation. But we learned to deal with it, you know. And how did we learn? Well, technology started, you know, coming up. It's like, hey, we have Skype, you know. So if you don't talk to your kids, it's because you don't want to talk to your kids. So I tried to at least be there, you know, virtually with them when they were, you know, waking up and going on the bus or leaving the house. And I made it a point to, like, when I got, you know, back from a mission or my shift, you know, call my wife up and tell her, hey, I'm good to go. Because you never know. It's like you could be sitting in your room and next thing you know, you got an incoming mortar and, you know, you didn't say I love you, you know, or you hung up the phone, you know, and you were angry. Yeah, I wouldn't change. I mean, just that, you know, just being there, you know, for them a little bit more. Like I said, it was tough, but we got through it. Right, Aliyah? That's my oldest daughter, by the way.
I think if I could go back, I would plan better. Now I plan each day to try to. I have this thing with my son and my nephews who lived with me for several years. Every morning while we were leaving, I would go to work and they would go to school. We would always say to each other, don't forget, what are we supposed to do today? We're supposed to conquer the day. You know? We would say people are conquering the world, but we're just going to conquer the day, one day at a time. And that didn't come about for like maybe 6 years ago. And I wish I had that mindset when I started this family, when my children were coming into this world. If I would have just planned things better, gave things more priority, gave things more time to grow, to expand. I was at one time just going 9 to 5, jumping out of work so that I can go home, eat something, shower up, change, so I can go do ministry. And I was bivocational for a long, long time. But in the last 5 years, God has given me some insight, some ideas to implement in my life that has positioned me to have more freedom now. And I wish I just knew, I don't want to say this strategy or this method, but I wish I knew this secret in the beginning, because my children would have had more of me, my wife would have had more of me, and the church would have more of me. You know, and above all things, God would have more of me. But I was so spread out and so consumed in providing for my home that work was, you know, extremely important, and it should be. All right? I'm not saying don't call it tomorrow and say, hey, I quit. You know?
The pastor said so.
The responsibility of working is important. And what I want you to understand, especially young people, hear this out. When you don't plan, you get stuck at a job and you're there for a long time, and they don't honor you with pay, they don't honor you with the benefits you deserve, and there's no career move. There's no way of moving forward or going to a higher level. You're just stuck. And that happens to people that don't plan. When you have a plan and you put this plan to execute, and you put the amount of time that you want to make sure, I'm here, I want to get here, then I want to get there, and I want to get over there, then you hold yourself accountable to the plan that you have written out. You know, it's not only your thoughts, now you write them out, and now you're trying to execute them. When you do that and you discover success, then you start doing that in other areas of your life. And when I discovered this thing that God put in me 5 years ago, and I share this so that somebody can understand what I'm talking about. 5 years ago, God was already preparing me to be released from my job, right? But I relied on my income. I relied on that salary to supply my family and everything that we do. But the Lord opened up a way for me to start putting things in perspective and start organizing things in my life and start focusing on goals and plans that 2 years ago, this month, 2 years ago, I walked away from my job that I was there for 20 years. And I didn't walk away to take another job. I walked away so that I could be full-time with my family, full-time in ministry, and start my own business. And now I can do things with my kids. You know, they're homeschooled. We don't send them out. They're homeschooled, so I don't have to worry about the public school systems infiltrating their agenda on my children. But this is something I'm telling you, it wouldn't happen if I didn't plan. It wouldn't happen if my wife didn't plan. We would have been still stuck in the schemes of the normal 9 to 5 and the routines of life. And there's something greater out there that God wants you to experience and live out. And so don't just get stuck, you know. And I just wish that I wasn't stuck for so long, that I knew this beforehand. I would prepare myself, and I would probably have retired at the age of 29 instead of 43. So and I don't mean to brag. I'm saying this because it's important. Your time is valuable.
Yeah.
I want you to know that your time is valuable, and if people don't appreciate and value your time, those are people that shouldn't be a priority in your life either. You know, you need to value your time, the time that you have in serving God, the time that you have in being with your siblings, with your family, the time that you have for yourself. We live in a society and a time now that, and I'm sorry, I went off topic on this.
That's good.
But you know, I know there's young people here, and we already lived double your life. All right, we've been on this planet twice. You know,
You already telling man that age.
but some of us 3 times. Cause I'm as young. I'm young enough to be one of his children. I'm just what?
You see gray hair, but it's outdated.
But value your time, because man, that is something you don't get back at all. You can always make more money. You know, you can always make another decision to do something else. But time is valuable. Time is of the essence.
Beautiful. I wouldn't have done anything really to change it when it comes to my children. They're still growing from day when they were born. I've cherished and enjoyed every moment. Like I said earlier, I will do it all over again. Just to finish up what Pastor Stephen said about time, value your time. It's so true. There is a saying or an expression. I don't know if you guys are gonna understand it in English or not, but it says time is like a sword. If you don't cut it, it will cut you. Does that make sense? Meaning you have to take advantage of your time. If you don't, the time will take advantage of you. 20, 30 years later, then you see yourself stuck, not going anywhere. So before you go to sleep, you have to have a plan. You have to have, I wish that this is something I must speak about myself. I wish I can turn the clock back, but I just can't. Because a lot of advices I have been given, I've never took. I just like, whatever. They don't know what they're talking about, including my parents. But I did it my way because I wanted to do it my way. And my way, it really got me. Thank God. I'm settled, I got a beautiful family, but still I could have done more. So for the young generation, please do not waste your time. Take it and take it serious.
For me, I would say chase happiness, not money. So, pretty much it. Because there was times where I worked 80, 90 hours. I would stay out of state. Now these 5th grade graduation. My boss told me I couldn't go. At the end of the day, am I working for the guy? No. So why did I? You get little things back, but time you don't get back.
That's right.
Those moments with your daughter, even if it's a 5th grade graduation, it's more than a paycheck.
What are the biggest challenges of being a father? I know it's a loaded question, so however you want it.
They're all girls.
You and I are in the same boat now. We're going to include Albert too.
Yeah, they're all girls. It's 3 against 1 all the time. She always wins. I could go on for days. For me, as a man, and they're girls, like I said, for me, I try to find things to relate. So it's hard to relate. Mommy has so much in common. So that's it for me.
For me, just to be able to understand and put myself on the shoe as well, because I was there most of the time as a youth or a teenager, so I know how to feel. So I don't want to be the type of father that whatever I say goes. No, I want to be open, so you can talk to me and tell me. And I tell my kids something: do not get out of the circle of trust, because I built that. The reason being is talk to me. Don't hide things from me. When you hide it, you're gonna make it even worse for you. But when you come and talk to me, we'll be able to work it together, and we can figure it out together, and then we can move on. That's it, you know. And I tell them, do not be a follower, be a leader. That's one thing, guys. You can't be a follower, because if you're a follower, you do not know your identity. But when you are a leader, you know who you are.
Good. That's it. For me, my main thing is, man, I never want my faith to fail. In our house, we talk a lot about God, and talk a lot about His Word, and about His promises, and we talk about miracles and the power of God and the power in the name of Jesus, and the Holy Spirit gives us this authority. We preach this and we show this to our children, and believe it or not, you know, my son utilizes that same weapons that we call the spiritual weapons. He speaks to us, you know, like my wife, I have a migraine, she'll be in the room and you'll go in there and his mind is like, man, you should feel better. If not, let's pray. You know, this is my son, he's praying. In our house, we have this joke, I'm the gospel teacher and my wife is the demon slayer. Yeah. So when it has to do with like Bible teaching, my son comes to me. But like if he heard something or saw something in the room at night, he goes to her. You know, which is cool, man. You know, she can slay all the demons she wants. But I want to make sure my faith doesn't fail, that her faith doesn't fail. Because, man, we have high stakes. We're so invested into our faith in God and His Word and promises that's something that we don't only teach, we walk into. We go on vacations and we have church service. We visit churches. I don't even have to minister. We'll go to a church because we want to teach our children that God is first, you know. Even when it's time to have fun, let's take time to give thanks to the Lord. When we eat meals, we pray. And when we're with the family, we try to lead by example. And I tell them, we don't do things, we don't pray in public to be seen, but we want to be seen when we pray. All right, there's a difference. You know, We don't do it for exposure, but we do it so that we can continue to teach our children the values of it and how important it is to continue doing these things.
I would say one of the biggest challenges for me was taking the army out of the house. So basically, you come home and you still have the uniform on, but that rank doesn't mean anything in the house. Or try not to make it, seem like, hey, you're the boss, especially when, the boss is already in the house. So, yeah. It's one of those things. It's like, like I said, growing up, you see that your dad, or my dad used to bark orders and all that stuff, and even the cockroaches would, hide. I didn't want that type of environment. So, like when I say keep the army out of the house, is because it's really easy to take that environment from the military into the house and create a hostile environment within the house. And a house is supposed to be a safe haven, somewhere where you feel comfortable, somewhere where you feel safe, loved, and if you don't have that, then it just makes it that much more difficult. So that's my take on that.
That's good. All right, we're winding now because we don't want to take up a lot more of your time, but I'm gonna throw a loaded one at you guys.
Oh, no.
You're
That's okay. So we have this one here. In the Bible, there are many examples of sibling jealousy and rivalry brought on by paternal favoritism. What are your thoughts on this dynamic? Is it inevitable or is it a choice?
I'll take that one first. I actually, I was fighting this one because, again, I am the youngest one on my mom's side, so I pretty much got the leftovers. All the way up to high school, I was a straight A student, and I never saw my parents say, "Hey, good job." However, the middle brother, he was selling drugs, in and out of jail and all that stuff, and I saw that they were like showing more love towards him, and I'm like, wait a second, this is kind of like, it's backwards. So there was, growing up, I always hated that, yes, I hated it. It was one of those things that I was like, well, why am I here? And then as I started, I guess in my teens, that's when I started like saying, you know what, it's not about, my brother, it's about me. I cannot continue to, look at that and have that be something negative and live in my life. Especially when you start thinking about, let me make myself disappear, because they're not going to miss you, but that's not true. It's because a mother knows that, hey, this one's okay, I got to take care of that one, so whenever you see that in your house, it's like, hey, voice it, talk to your parents. We don't have the answers to everything. We don't. There's not a book that says how to be a dad. And if there is, it's not going to apply to everybody, because everybody's built different. So, situations and all that stuff's going to be totally different, what they say, experiences are all different. So it's going to be like that. So once you get to, from the oldest one, that was basically, the oldest one, you always treat them like, oh, bebecito, it's like, and you give them everything, you give them the world. By the time you make it to the last one, it's like, is he still breathing? Yes, he is. Okay, he's good. So that was me, and I sort of kind of didn't like that because I wanted some attention, so, but, I grew out of it, so, and you too can.
Yeah, you too can do it.
That was crazy. Go ahead, Steve. That's all you.
Well, I don't want to say that it's a favoritism. I'm going to kind of go with him a little bit on it. It's based on the connection sometimes that one has with a child or a child has with a parent. If there's not common interest, let's say for instance, I don't like fishing, but let's say my wife likes fishing, and my son, he loves fishing. He's gonna bond in that moment more with my wife than with me, right? Now, it doesn't mean that he loves her more because of that. Now, I do know that there are favoritisms, and I do know that there's even a split when it comes down to mother and father. And we can see Bible stories. But in our home, we give a lot of attention to our youngest one. Our youngest one has special needs. He has Down syndrome. So his methods of communication is different from Matthias. Matthias is 10, Malachi is 8. Matthias can have a full-blown conversation, and you're like, wow, you know. But when you talk to Malachi, Malachi uses 2 or 3 word sentences to get across. So sometimes what happens is my son, my oldest, gets frustrated that there's a communication gap in between them. So we defend Malachi a lot. You know, Malachi wants to play rough with him, and he's a little rough sometimes, so we'll tell him, stop fighting with Malachi. And although it's Malachi probably provoking him and pushing him, but it's something that, you know, it's on a per child basis. And it's okay for a parent to be connected more to one child than the other. But when it comes down to saying, like, this is my favorite, and you put everybody else on the opposite end, I think that's a big issue. That's a no-no, you know? But you're always going to be drawn to somebody. That's why if you have one child, then it's perfect, because you could only spoil one child. You know? You can only give all the attention to one child. But once 2, 3, 4, and 5 start coming, you know, your attention is now limited, and it's going to go to the one that needs it most sometimes. You know, if you have 4 kids and you got 3 of them that are great with math and one that's struggling, who are you going to spend more time doing math with? The one that's struggling. It's not that you love that one more. It's that you know there's a need there. Therefore, you want to cater and feed to that need. He felt what the prodigal son felt. Or better yet, the brother. When the prodigal son returned home, the brother was like, wait a second, I've been here all this time, and you show no love and no appreciation, no party for me. But the father went on to say, hey, this other one was lost. He was dead, and now he's alive. You've always been here, you know? So I know it's kind of tough being that one child, but take pride in knowing and be proud of yourself and knowing that, man, you've done everything right. And the one that needs the most attention is getting it for the moment.
I truly believe that there is no favoritism when it comes to children. There is no way. You know why? I look at it this way. My hands have 5 fingers. If I cut one or lose one, is that because that means that I don't like this finger? I love all my fingers. So with the children, it plays like that. It really does. When you have kids, every child, like the pastor and Albert says, they're just an individuals. So some of them you gotta deal with them differently. Some of them are rebellious. Some of them are very stubborn. They don't want to listen to the parents, so the parents have to use a different route to get to them. And the other ones, they're just so calm. Whatever the parents tell them to do, they do, right? So but when it comes to favorite, there is no way. I truly do not believe, because love would not provide that. Period. When you love, you just love. If he's your child, it doesn't matter if he's bad or good. Hey, listen, just Jesus himself. We can't go that far. We all sinners. We all do things that we fall short of the glory of God. But at the end of the day, guess what? God, he calls us by our name, not by our sin, man, because of the love he has for us.
Oh man, robberies. Man, I grew up in a family of 5. I mean, we competed in everything. I wanted to be like Jay. I wanted to be like Sully. I wanted to be like that and everything. And that's what makes me who I am today, right? I always was like wanting to be like them all the time. But there was no way I could be like Jay. Jay got up in the youth camp and spoke to hundreds of people. I don't like standing on stage just talking to y'all. Let alone.
No offense.
No offense, but let alone like 500, 600 people there. It just takes a certain creative person to do that. And just everybody's built different.
Yes.
And that's just the way I look at it. Everybody was very different. And when it came to my parents, they showed, I mean, when it came to pastor, they were very proud of him, and they still are to this day. And you know, my other brother fully owns his own business, and my parents are very supportive of that. My older sister is a Methodist. They're part of the Methodist faith, and they have their pastors, and their kids are in college, so they're super proud. So everybody's pretty much over time really has evolved. It's just really no that kind of vibe of time for haterade. I just really feel that, you know, you should be proud of who you have right next to you, and the fact that that's blood is all the success you need, right? That's it for me.
I just want to say that sometimes the youngest one gets more love than the older ones as time goes by, for one reason and one reason only, is because the parents messed up with the first one. I'm serious. Let me clarify. When you have your first child, they have a curfew, right? At 9 o'clock, they got to go to bed. But then the second child comes, and you realize that the first one's not going to bed at 9, and they're breaking rules and they're becoming rebellious. The second child comes, and now their curfew becomes 10 o'clock, right? Then the third child is 11 o'clock. The fourth child, he could be out to 1 in the morning.
With an iPad.
For the simple fact that you learned some mistakes with the first one and the second one, and by the time you got to the fourth one, man, you like, no, let's give this guy some wiggle room. You know, let him mess up. You got a C? All right, let's work on to get a B, right? But when you had your first child, they brought a B home, you're like, you disappoint me, I want an A. But then you realize you know, look, I'm gonna be honest, man, we made some mistakes in my family, in our household. So we try not to pass those same mistakes and experiences on to the next child. And that's why we stopped having kids, so we stopped making those types of mistakes. We stopped that too.
I'm gonna throw one more question at you. We've been focusing a lot on the guys and fatherhood in this series, and the girls have been very patient. Of course, we have fathers as well, and we also have issues, so we're dealing with those as well. But what is one piece of advice you would give to young women in this room who will have to choose the father of their children?
Ooh. Can I go first?
Go ahead. Break it down. I think you're going to speak for all of us.
That's the last one, so make it good.
I'm going first on this one.
Steve.
This is for those that are, look, there's a Bible verse in Proverbs. It might be 28:18, something like that. It says, it's for the guys. It says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and also has the favor of the Lord, right? But he has to find a wife. So the female, the girl, has to be wife material. Wife quality. Okay? Hold on, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen in the room.
We should have started with this question.
Question 1.
So check this out. So the female has to be wife quality material, right? That means that if the female is, I'm not speaking to the future wives here, I'm speaking to them. If you are wife quality, wife worthy, then you have to find a husband who has quality and who is worthy to gain your love.
Hey.
The way you do this, you're serving the Lord, and you look for the guy that falls in love with God. If he can love Christ and love God and respect and value everything about God, then trust me, he's not going to have a problem honoring you.
All right.
No, I mean, you can't have anything. That's the bottom line. You know, it's not like you're gonna be. If you go to the club to look for a husband, you're in the wrong place. You know, so you, like he said, you have to find a man that loves Christ first. You know, and then he gives you that little wink. It's like, oh, okay, it may work out, but you can't. I'm telling you, you can't go to the streets looking for a husband, and then say, oh, I'm going to change them. You already messed up twice. You went to the wrong place and you're trying to do something that, it's not on you. You can't change a person, so that's, what he said is it's a home run, I shouldn't even be talking right now.
No, you go.
Spirit of the Lord just deposit something in my spirit.
Go ahead, Steve. Tell him, Steve.
Study their parents.
Study their parents.
The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I'm serious.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Man, this should have been first.
No.
Steve has like 17 points on this one.
Bring me back for this.
Man, if I could tell Melody and Layla, it would have to be that, first of all, like Steve said, he has to love the Lord. But then he's just gotta love you more than Daddy. I mean, come on. How much does my dad love you?
I hope a lot.
A whole bunch, right? I was my guitar player back in my church, 12th Street. But come on, I tell Melody that all the time. Number one, the guy that comes to this house has to love the Lord and has to love you more than I do. And has to come, obviously prepared to take on responsibility. Because at that point, it's just not you anymore. You're engaging in something together. But as he said, both of y'all have to be ready. So the woman has to be prepared. You're in your career, you're in your schooling, you're heading in your right direction. You want somebody to add to that. You don't want that person just to drag you down. That's not how I raised you. Right? So, and from my perspective, man, I came from absolutely nothing. I told you the other day how I started here in Florida, and it was from nothing. So everything that I have built is because it's a joint venture. That's pretty much it.
Oh, this is a powerful topic, right?
Alex don't ever want to leave.
Stay home,
Well,
twins.
I know, you're right about that, man. It's hard because I grew up with 3 sisters, so it's kind of hard. I know how that is. For the ladies, I always I talk to my kids about this stuff. For the man, it's his heart, number one. Sometimes ladies, they want to look at the physique of the man. I want him to have a nice or curly hair or whatever it is. But the inside of the man, he just, hello. You gotta look out for the heart of the man. I truly believe that generations have changed throughout the time, but I also believe that principles do not change. Because the principles of the Bible, they've always been and they always will be. So I tell my children, when I speak about my children, I tell them, hey, listen, you are my pride and dignity. Because when a woman allowed herself to be a toy into man's hand, so because she doesn't have no respect. If you want to have respect, you got to show respect to the man.
Good job.
I tell you this because I'm a man and I know when I see a female not giving a respect to herself, so I'm not going to have respect for her. This is the way I used to think. I'm not being honest, But when I approach the girl and I know that she has so much respect for herself, so I'm like, man, you know what, man? You have to give her respect. There is no other way to it, So you guys, I know there is a 16 years old here, there's maybe a 20 years old here. It is going to come a time that you're going to think about matrimony, you want to have a family and stuff like that. But always, you got to look for a man, like they say, that has God in his heart, that truly believe. Because if the man has those kind of qualities, that man is going to be the right man for you. Now, the marriage is not going to be perfect. So something that we have to establish here is never going to be perfect, but you can make it perfect by learning from one another. So, that's it.
I'm so sorry. This is very important.
My bad.
Don't settle. Don't settle, all right? Value your worth and remember, men, this men will not change after they get married. Men, what you have now is what you inherit after marriage. So if he's lazy, if he's a gamer right now and he's only 20, he's probably gonna be a gamer at 30, at 40, you know, so it goes on. So don't settle. I'm serious. And go to somebody like a pastor. Ask the pastors how many people they married. They've conducted probably over 50 wedding ceremonies. They have data. They know which ones succeeded and which ones fell apart. You know, they keep tab. Oh, we got 40 marriages that are still together, right? And then these 3, they flopped. And unfortunately, I can't tell somebody not to marry another individual. You know, that's unethical. I can give you pointers and I can like say, you know, red flags. But at the end of the day, it's the individual that's going to say I do and I won't. But you don't want to regret on that decision, all right? Don't you regret, you know, not studying one thing and pursuing something else, because you can change real quick. Regret not taking one job and you settle for something else. You can make a change there. But once you marry, that's a permanent decision you make. That's a tattoo to your body. But it's permanent. And marriage is permanent. It's a tattoo, a mark in your soul. And the person needs to reflect greatness. You are worthy to be honored and respected. I met my wife when she was 15. I was 16. We started dating in high school, right? You know when we got married? When she was 25 and I was 26. You want to know why? Because for about 8 years, I wasn't ready. She didn't see a real man in me. She didn't see husband material in me. So she waited until the Lord saved my life and then gave me the opportunity to put a ring on that finger. And we've been together over 31 years now.
And can I just add on some? Just this is what is called decision making when it comes to relationship. Decision making. That's it. When you know that's the right person for you, but you always have to give time to yourself. You know, don't be quick to make that decision. Take your time, because you gotta learning about the person. It doesn't happen just going out having dinner. You learn about that person when you really live with that person. That's when the true relationship starts. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that you gotta have a boyfriend go and live with a boyfriend in the house. That's not what the Bible says. I'm not saying this. No, because I tell my kids this is not gonna happen. But if we're gonna do things right, if we have to do things, we have to do things right. Because that's what God says in the book. He speaks about that. We cannot commit oil and water. Can we mix them together? We just can't. Why? Because the oil is just gonna flow. You know, it's not gonna. They don't go together. So we have to try to live a holy life. I know we're gonna fall into mistakes and all things, but we don't want to be repetitive to the mistakes that we do. We have to learn.